happy to see so many of you here today. Why don't you turn to your neighbor and say, "You're looking good." Turn to another neighbor and say, "I'm glad to be standing next to you." All right, join me in clapping, putting your hands together and just clapping. We're going to take some time to just sing songs about God and God's love. So feel relaxed and just groove with me, come on. We sing, "You can have my yes." You can have my yes with no exception. I'm giving you my rights to second guessing. You can have my yes. I'm giving you my fear of never knowing whatever's coming next. I know you got me. You can have my yes. You're the lamp, you're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquered my fears, so I leave it all behind. I'm running to the light. I'm giving you my dreams. I'm giving you my dreams and my ambition. Your presence is my prize and my provision. I'll answer when you ask. For who can come against if you are for me? 'Cause even in the fire, I know you got me. Giving you my yes again. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. Oh, oh, oh. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquered my fear, so I leave it all behind. I'm running to the light. I want you to join me in lifting up your hands as we sing. Oh, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. I'll follow you. You sing it out now. Oh, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. I'll follow you. Yeah. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. Oh, oh, oh. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquered my fear, so I leave it all behind. We're running to the light. Can I hear everyone just cheer this way? Woo! We're running to the light. Woo! I just love your energy. Let's keep it up and let's just move along. This song is about making a difference. With open eyes, I'm walking to the light. 'Cause I've been sleeping way too long. This blurry vision had me living blind. Show me what's really going on. The world is in need right now. It's time to let love be loud. Gotta be what we preach about. 'Cause we can make a difference. Woo! We can do our talking with our hands and feet. Love is on a mission. Let the difference start with you and me. guys praise so well. And now we're going to enter into a time of worship. So I want to invite you to join me in raising your hands, just closing your eyes right now. So worship is all about connecting with God. And sometimes right now even we just need to reflect on the lyrics, because it just shows us and teaches us about who God is in our lives. Before I open my arms, you open up yours. Before
Wow, it's so good to worship and experience God's presence. Thanks TiVo Band for recording that for us.
I'm Christine.
And I'm Clement, and we want to welcome you to TiVo Online. If you are new, so great to have you, and we hope you are feeling at home with us. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe and turn on your notification for YouTube. The Evolution has been dropping some amazing content lately, so you want to make sure you don't miss a single online gathering or video release. You'll be getting weekly messages from our pastor and leadership team. You can also watch awesome stuff like our Into the Grey panels on social justice. Not just that, our brand new life, culture and leadership podcast, Uncommon Humanity, which is out now on Spotify and Apple. So Christine.
Yes, Clement.
You know, I'm Uncommon Humanity's biggest fan.
I can see that.
Yeah, and I totally love what Pastor Charmaine and Carrie's talk about in each episode. It's just so awesome and makes me look at my life and the world around me with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Right?
We have such great feedback from many of our friends of The Evolution,
Yeah.
many of whom are members or Christians, so I'm pretty sure you guys are going to love it too.
Yes.
So keep up with us on Instagram, yes, all the latest happenings and all the latest drops of content we are creating.
Yeah.
And if you're already a fan like Clement and want to participate in blessing someone else, help keep us going with our generosity.
Yeah.
You can head over to theevolution.org/give for different giving options, or simply scan the QR code below to give via PayNow.
Yes. Here at TiVo, we always give to God first, as our gratitude, love, and worship. But we also give for the sake of our team and hard work that goes into building our community. Your giving helps us to dream up, produce, and create a future. So thank you for being generous.
And now, time to get your note-taking app out.
Sit on the edge of your seat because your heart is going to be so blessed.
And here is today's message.
So for the Hero series today, we're taking a trip back to a very dark time in the world to learn about King George VI and Winston Churchill and the miracle of Dunkirk, okay? Now, the miracle of Dunkirk is a battle that many in the UK remember as the miracle of Dunkirk, okay? And really today, I find that today's message is going to be perfect for what is happening right now in the world. You know, things seem pretty bleak. The chances of war escalating into World War III is starting to look possible because of all the crazy narcissistic dictators that are in charge of countries today. And, you know, while Singapore still, you know, we always ride through every crisis, whether it is COVID or whether it is war, you know, or whether it's natural disaster, we seem to always be a little bit better off and well insulated, correct? But even in Singapore, you know what? People are starting to feel very restless and concerned. And besides war, listen, our generation is facing changes and aggressions of different kinds. Tech platforms and billionaires and AI algorithms, they have too much unchecked power, okay? So whether you are directly impacted or not lately, listen, for all of us here, a church that is made out of millennials, Gen Z, and now Gen Alpha coming up, and not forgetting Sue, who is Gen X. Okay, there's never been a harder time to be a young person. Right? It seems harder than ever to live meaningfully and purposefully. It seems harder to hear God. It seems harder than ever to connect and build relationships in some deep and meaningful, nourishing way. And, you know, I really feel for the young people and feel for many of you who are going through the transition of the 20s and even the 30s and some of you now the 40s, okay? You know, those transitions used to be time where people had mind and energy, space to contemplate their identity, figure out who they are, evolve who they are. But today, this world we're living in is so noisy. You know, I worry that most of us, right, we're not hitting the transition points that we should be hitting, the natural human points of remaking our identity, figuring out new dreams. Or for the young people here, learning to be confident, knowing who you are. You know, we're missing on all these crucial things that make us human, that make us good, that make us able to make impact in the world. So today, I think the message will be a very good reminder and an encouragement to all of us that it is possible for us to turn the tide. It is possible for light to emerge in any sort of darkness that we face at any stage of our life. Because you see, Dunkirk, the special thing about the Battle of Dunkirk is it's referred to a miracle because many historians refer to this as the battle that changed the tide of World War II. You see, in the memories and lore of many Brits and many countries, Dunkirk is a tale of survival and God's divine deliverance. The moment when years of war and suffering and evil that began with Hitler and his Nazi followers and allies finally turned in favor of the Allied forces who were trying to push back their darkness. Now, of course, we know today history is, of course, complex. Nobody is all good or all bad or all evil or all dark, right? And the fact is, winners do get to immortalize their wins and bury their trespasses sometimes, right? While the losers tend to fade into shadows of silence. But there are still certain things and certain points in a story that can be pretty clear. You know, it's clear when the dictators are mucking about. It's clear when narcissistic leaders are taking countries down a wrong turn and affecting everybody else. And that was what happened in World War II. Okay? So it's pretty accepted opinion that the world might have been a very different place this last 90 years if not for Britain and its allies defeating Hitler at Dunkirk. Well, not exactly defeating, I'll tell you the story later, okay? But all these years, I think before COVID and before all this recent upheaval, actually, if you look at history, the world was starting to become more tolerant. The world was starting to change its mind about things like social justice. And arguably, those would not have happened if the Nazis had taken over the world, if Britain had lost the war. Okay, times might even be darker. So today, through the stories of King George and Churchill, I want to encourage you that it is worth living by higher values even if the world around you doesn't seem to be doing that. I want you to know that no matter what your background or starting point, or right now your struggles and setbacks, God still has a purpose for every single one of us. And we live by the simple ways of Jesus. The simple core values of great leaders like the ones we're going to talk about today, we can find our life. And we can be a part of changing the tide that is happening around us. Does that sound good to you? Okay, so for the Hero series today, we are focusing on 3 qualities and 3 qualities only. They are responsibility. Say responsibility. Resilience. Everyone say resilience. And finally, everyone say reliance. Okay, so I want to start with a verse about Jesus since we're coming off Easter. And this is Paul talking about his reflections on who Jesus is. So 1 Corinthians 5:21, the Berean Bible, this is a very complicated sentence, so this is the simplest I could find. He says there, God made him, referring to Jesus, who knew no sin, to be sin on our behalf, so that in Jesus we might become the righteousness of God. I know, right? One sentence so complicated, correct? Okay, so it's a short verse. But in that verse, Paul says a lot about Jesus. And because he says it in such a complicated way, right? A lot of scholars theorize that he was making a very strong theological statement about Jesus Christ. Okay, so most scholars, this is how we get, right? Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and because of that, now you are free, right? It comes a lot from verses like this. Okay, Jesus is the pure and sinless, innocent Son of God who is both God and human. And in order for God to set human beings free from our violent and evil and sinful nature and bring us back to our good nature, he sends Jesus, the pure guy, okay, to sacrifice himself for sinful humanity and to pay the price for our evil so that we in turn can go free. Don't need to die, don't need to go to hell, okay? Now, honestly, I can't tell you for sure that's what Paul meant. Okay, but we got no time to get into the weeds about that today, all right? But what I can say for sure, and a simple thing that I want to draw out from what Paul is saying about Jesus, is that there is something about Jesus, the way he lived, and the way he died on behalf of, or like what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks over and over, rather than on behalf of, we say because of human beings, right? And our violence, that if we accept his example, we live by His values, it can help us to access the goodness that God has already put on the inside of every human being. Okay? So sometimes I think, right, Christians, 2,000 years, we overcomplicate our theology too much already. You know, and life and God and the universe, you know, it's complicated, but it's also kind of simple. Right? Okay, so the one who had no sin took responsibility for those of us who were sinful. The one who was pure took responsibility for those of us who were messed up. The one who was, you know, had no reason to become a human being, who had stayed in heaven and been God and enjoy all the privilege and power that comes with being God. Or even when he became a human, he could have just mind his own business. Are you hearing me? But Jesus was so adamant about his responsibility towards other human beings that he faced down poverty, cruelty, power, and manipulation, even to the point of being rejected, betrayed, and finally unjustly crucified on the cross. That's why now we say in our church, right, Jesus just didn't just die on our behalf, he died because of us. Okay, now of course I'm biased, but growing up loving Jesus and reading about Jesus and seeing his example in the stories of how he loved people and how he stood up for what's right and how he taught the Bible and the Hebrew Bible in a different way, for me, Jesus is the hero among heroes. And here's the thing, men like King George and Winston Churchill, however imperfect they were as leaders and people, you know, however imperfect they did Christianity, I don't know whether they were dedicated Christians, okay? But they, like me, grew up heavily influenced by the Bible and heavily influenced by the example of Jesus. And so through their stories, you will begin to see that there were certain values that made them great. Certain values that were demonstrated by our Savior, Jesus Christ. Okay, and so let's start with one of them, and that is responsibility. But more specifically, responsibility on behalf of others. Say after me, responsibility on behalf of others. See, once again, I remind you, Jesus didn't have to, but he did. Jesus didn't have to care, but he did. Jesus was good. Humanity was not. He's not obligated to do anything for us. I mean, that's what you learn in therapy, right? Save yourself first. Other people are not your responsibility, right? But Jesus takes on responsibility on our behalf. So I really believe that one of the reasons why the world has turned quite dark lately is because people have stopped prioritizing responsibility on behalf of others. You know, once upon a time, responsibility was the dominant way human beings lived in communities and villages. If our neighbor was in need, we expected ourselves and we expected other people in the community to step up. If there was an injustice in our schools or our workplaces, you know, my parents would teach me, you need to stand up to the bully. You know, if there was someone, you know, if there's a country being cruel or fighting some war far away, we will all have a feeling. You know, countries who want to get involved and sometimes even fight and sacrifice on another country's behalf. You know, the idea that every human being owes some sort of responsibility, duty, and obligation to other people that goes beyond just ourselves was for a very long time the ideal in humanity. An ideal that many civilizations lived by. But lately, this seems to be on the rollback. We seem to have reverted to the ways of Cain, right? And what did the Bible teach, right? When human beings stop being their brother's keeper, violence inevitably takes over the world. And that's why you got what we got today. Okay, so listen, if you have never been taught this value, and I think nowadays, it's true, we seldom are taught this value because there's no time, you know, because your parents are too worried about your grades, your teachers are too buried in paperwork to have time to mentor you more, then let me be the first person to tell you, you have a responsibility towards others, not just yourself. And this responsibility doesn't start when you graduate. It doesn't start when you have made enough money and have leftover success to pass on to someone else. It doesn't only start when you are appointed a leader in church or you know exactly who you are and what you want to do with your life. No, responsibility is right here, right now. you are born with it. Okay? Whether you are in your 30s or you are 18 years old, whether you are 14 years old or 4 years old, responsibility is a mandate, the Bible says, that God gave to humanity right from the get-go. All of humanity. Whether you feel ready for the responsibility or not, it belongs to you. So here's the most powerful part of King George VI's story. You know, King George was the king who was never supposed to be king. So listen, King George wasn't originally named King George, okay? He was named Albert at birth. And he was actually the second son of King Edward VII and Queen Mary, the spare to his elder brother Edward, who by birth was the one that was destined to become king and rule Great Britain. Now, on top of this, right, not just being the spare, you know, Albert as a child was very sickly, and he was described by historians as easily frightened and somewhat prone to tears. He was also, unfortunately, born with a condition called knock knees, where the knees are deformed and bent inwards, touching each other while your feet cannot come together. So, growing up, not only was he seen as a defective child by most of society, Albert also had to wear huge leg braces for many years to correct the condition. And that means he had to endure embarrassment as a youth, not to mention people looking at him because he is part of the royal family. And so he grew up with very, very low self-esteem. And because his parents were seldom around due to their royal duties, even though Albert, you know, desperately wanted their affection and love and was always very fond of them, his affection was seldom returned by his parents. His mother was largely cold towards him, probably ashamed of his deformed condition. And his father, Edward, you know, was very harsh and known to be very critical when it came to Albert and saw him as, you know, a weakling because he was not a strong man. He was not a typical macho man. Are you hearing me? And so with how his parents were, it will come as no surprise to you then that Albert's brother Edward became a bully. And very often he would beat Albert because he saw himself as the smarter, more charismatic, more capable brother, and of course the favorite crown prince. Now, you know, we're always saying, right, but every story has a silver lining. Are you here with me? So you might be thinking, well, okay, we say all these things, but maybe he began to grow up, right? And he didn't have all this stuff that Edward had, but maybe suddenly he discovers he's super intelligent or super talented in some unexpected way. Well, guess what? Albert was always at the bottom of his class at school. And as if it couldn't get any worse, at age 8, he developed a severe and dilapidating stutter that would affect him for the rest of his life. So by all accounts, there was nothing about Albert that would make anyone think that he could one day be a hero or one of the most beloved monarchs in all of English history. But listen, as fate would have it, things take an unexpected turn in the life of the royal family. When in 1936, after less than a year of ascending the throne, his brother, now King Edward VIII, announces that he wants to abdicate the throne. Now listen, abdication is a situation that was, at the time, unprecedented in modern monarchy. You know, Edward is one of only 2 English kings to have ever done so in all British history. And the first abdicated in the 1300s. Okay? But listen, by then, Edward, with all his ego and pride, had earned a reputation for being a selfish, extravagant, reckless, and irresponsible king and royal family member. To the point that even his own father, the previous king, had worried if Britain would be safe in his hands. And he's even documented saying, I hope he never has children, because I do not want the throne to pass to his children. Okay? Now, to add to scandal, the reason for Edward's abdicating the throne, resigning the throne, was to pursue a relationship with an already married woman. Now remember, Albert is the spare. He is the second son and next in line. Suddenly now the spare is the one in line. And panicked, he tries to repeatedly persuade and beg his brother Edward not to follow through. In fact, historians write on the day that it was finally confirmed by Parliament that the spare son would now ascend the throne, Albert breaks down in tears, doubting whether he could ever rule as well as his father did, overwhelmed by whether he had the ability to lead the people when he had such a terrible stutter and fear of public speaking. But eventually, out of a sense of duty and responsibility, on May 1937, Albert is crowned King George. Now, he chooses the name George because his father, King Edward's birth name was George. His dad had been a very hardworking king who had served and led the people well, and so he aspired to follow in his father's example. Second, he takes the name George to remind the people of tradition and the long line of monarchs that came before to assure the people of continuity and stability. Now, even in that little hidden quiet action, he doesn't realize it himself, but his family begins to see that even in the act of choosing a name, something in this guy has the heart of a true leader. But of course, that's not how George feels, right? And so on Coronation Day, well, listen, the photo behind me says it all. Okay, this was his coronation on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. Everyone is smiling, especially his wife. His whole family looks confident, fine, but look at George. Okay, and because of his demeanor on Coronation Day and all the, rumors and stuff that have been reported about him and his timidness over the years, the newspapers nicknamed him after coronation the Reluctant King. Okay, but listen, nobody even back then, even George himself, would anticipate that this man would end up seeing Great Britain through the most devastating hardships of World War II. So what happens after he's crowned king is George, or rather his wife, Elizabeth, hires a speech therapist to help him. At first, official notices had to be put out using flyers and posters because he didn't dare to speak. And whenever they had to make public appearances and he would get tongue-tied, Queen Elizabeth would speak on his behalf instead. But behind the scenes, George rigorously learns how to make speeches both over the radio and in public, each time fighting his anxiety and his stutter. In fact, one of the things that King George becomes the most famous for is his very first radio address titled, "With God's Help, We Shall Prevail." So he makes this speech during the beginning of World War II, during what was known as the period of the Blitz in London. Now, the Blitz took place September 1940 to May 1941. And listen, at that point of time, Britain had already entered the war. And Hitler, in a bid to force Britain to surrender, systematically, nearly every day, sends firefighter planes, and pounds London with bombing raids. Okay, in fact, approximately 30,000 are killed in London and over 7,000 in other neighboring cities. Over 100,000, some say up to 139,000, are injured during this same period. But it is this short and beautiful speech that holds the nation together. In fact, today it is regarded in history as one of the greatest speeches ever to be made. Okay, so listen, George was resolved to bring the people together through his words. As the war progresses, right, he fast becomes one of the most loved kings in British history. So at the start of the Blitz, right, Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Parliament actually orders George and the royal family to take refuge in Canada because they expect Britain to fall to the Nazis. And if the royal family were to be captured, Hitler would likely imprison them or kill them. And so they go, please, please leave the country. But King George refuses to leave Britain. And just 1 month into the Blitz, in fact, Buckingham Palace itself is bombed and the courtyard right in front of the palace where they were staying is blown up. The windows shatter inwards from the impact and the royal family narrowly escapes inside. And that was when George turns to Queen Elizabeth, his wife, and says, "You and the children, I won't leave for Canada, but you and the children should leave." But listen, his own wife was so inspired by her own husband's resolve and courage that she says back to him, "The children will not leave unless I do." and I shall not leave unless their father does. And the king shall not leave the country in any circumstances whatsoever. Okay? So as the blitz continues, husband and wife start to become figures of courage and comfort to the people of Britain. They make regular tours through the bomb sites to meet with the people, to raise their morale and survey how they can help effectively. Their own daughter, the future Queen Elizabeth II, at 18 years old, goes to serve in World War II as a driver and mechanic operating heavy army trucks. King George and his family become integral to the survival and restoration of Britain as the war goes on. So you see, the man who was born a spare, the man who was never supposed to be king, the man who had no talent, no charisma, none of the typical gifts one would expect of a great leader, listen, this man became one of the greatest leaders in history. You know, King George went on to make other speeches, but today he is most remembered for one line. And that line is the motto of his Legacy Award, and it reads, "The highest of distinction is service to others." So listen, making a difference isn't reserved for those who are born with talents or good looks or personality. It is not limited to whether you are charismatic or are good at public speaking. Edward was born the crown prince, right? It was his destiny to rule. He was talented, he was smart, he was good looking, he had personality. But at the end of the day, he was a weak man on the inside and a terrible leader. King George spoke so little besides his broadcasts and speeches that nothing about him looks like some great, leader and king or leader of his people. In fact, the historians joke about this quite a lot, right? There's more documentation of what his wife said than he said because he was so quiet. So I want you to understand, there will always be people out there that are more gifted. There will always be many people out there who are born into the right circumstances, who are popular or promoted because they have all the superficial looks of a leader. But that does not mean their lives will matter. That does not mean that they will make an actual difference in this world. Because making a difference belongs to those who take responsibility. And not just responsibility for our own happiness or our own safety or our own dreams, but people who take responsibility on behalf of others. You see, our Bible says if you live only for yourself, that is selfishness. But if you take responsibility on behalf of others, if you lay down your life for your friend, Jesus calls that great love. Greatness. So all the youth here, listen, I want to challenge you, even if you're a new Christian. Live a life that believes in taking responsibility. And responsibility for the well-being of others, not just yourself. You see, don't be a youth who is just known for being the most talented or most handsome or beautiful or most popular or most well-dressed. Instead, make it your life's aim to be known as the one who was the most kind, the one who was most loyal, the one that your friends remember because you said an encouraging word or you looked out for them when they were bullied, the one who was generous, the one who was responsible. And listen, if you are the most shy or timid or introverted kind, you feel that you're not talented or given, listen, I want you to know, if someone like King George had a leader on the inside of him, listen, you don't need to be loud to be a leader. You don't need to be gifted to make a difference. All you need is a heart that genuinely cares for people. An attitude that is willing to take responsibility, that's beyond just your own. That's all you need. And all the adults here, I want to encourage you too. Keep being someone who truly walks in the likeness of Jesus. Never be someone who is responsible for only yourself or only your own small circle. Keep being someone that seeks to expand your circle of care. Too many people in the world right now in leadership are only in it for the popularity, only in it for the recognition, only in it for the power and the rewards it gives them, right? You see it at work all the time, right? But in reality, people like that are only for themselves. People like that should not be trusted with leadership. People like that, are why humanity goes backwards. The world needs people and leaders who have a deep sense of duty and responsibility for others. Humans whose sense of responsibility causes them to answer the call when needed, not because they are the bravest, not because they're most talented, but because they care. You know, people who will overcome their fear, you know, and push through their limitations because they want to do the best they can by other people. We need people like that to serve. We need people like that to lead. We need people like that to change the lives of people in communities around us. People whose internal sense of responsibility is far bigger and beyond just themselves or their talents and gifts. And that was King George. And that was also Jesus. So everyone say responsibility. Everyone say others. Now the next quality I want to talk about is resilience. And again, let's be specific here, okay? Resilience under pressure. Now, according to Google, resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. The ability to be knocked down by life and stand back up stronger than ever. Now, psychologists are, of course, constantly studying and writing about, you know, human resilience and the factors that make up human resilience. And over the years, you'll hear everything from, you know, you need a positive attitude, you need optimism, you need the ability to regulate your emotions and mood, you know, you need to change your mindsets, whether you have a growth mentality or a scarcity mindset. You know, are you someone that can see setbacks and opportunities as learning opportunities or absolute failure? All those things make up whether a person is resilient. Okay? Listen, there's no end to what we can say about resilience. Okay? But what is clear is this. We all need resilience if we have dreams we want to chase. We all need resilience if we want to thrive and not just survive life. We all need resilience if we want to live lives that matter. And so we actually all need resilience in order to follow Jesus. So I want to take you to another passage about Jesus, right? And it's about a moment in his life just before he was about to be crucified. And I think this is one of the stories, is the moments where you see Jesus at his weakest. Okay, so Luke 22:39, it says that Jesus left and made his way to the Mount of Olives, as was his custom, and the disciples followed him. He withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and prayed, and he said, Father, if it is your will, take this cup of suffering away from me. Take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not my will, but your will must be done. Then a heavenly angel appeared to him and strengthened him. He was in anguish and prayed even more earnestly. His sweat became like drops of blood falling on the ground. Again, I'm not going to elaborate on this. Is that okay? There's a medical condition where this happens. We don't know if that is really what happened to Jesus, okay? But under severe stress, it is possible actually for our tears to become like blood. Okay? But again, we don't know, okay? So listen to me. On the way to our dreams, struggle and challenge is inevitable. There will be moments where you are just down and out, doubting yourself, moments where you feel like your confidence is at an all-time low, moments where you stumble and feel stupid and you tell yourself, I don't know whether I'm cut out for this. You know, on the way to finding your purpose or even chasing God's calling for you, you will go through some incredibly hard and disappointing and painful and disillusioned seasons. You know, times when you just experience disappointment and setbacks and you just feel so terrible about your calling in God. And listen, let me tell you, if your conviction is to follow Jesus and actually live by his values, like real values are, not prosperity Christian values are, not, I'm going to be all blessed and all rich all the time values. I'm talking about really follow Jesus, okay? Whether or not you are rich or blessed or well. Are you hearing me? Yes. Then listen, I promise you, if you want to make a better world and really follow Jesus, I promise you that there will be rejection, there will be opposition ahead, there will be times where you just get slapped around by life and people. I mean, if Jesus had to go through it, you think you won't? It's so funny, right? You know, the whole point of Christianity is follow Jesus. Like, you know where Jesus ended up? Cross. Okay, but he resurrected, so true. Okay? But my point is this. Suffering is an unavoidable experience if you want to live a meaningful life. The Bible tells us Jesus paid a high price for his values. Regina said it, I told you about it, we've talked about it this whole Easter, right? He paid a high price for his values. He paid a high price for standing against the Roman Empire. He paid a high price for standing against the religious leaders who were exploiting the people. He paid a high price for his values. The Bible also shows us here in this passage that even though, yes, Jesus is God and fully divine, right? In this moment, he's also fully human. And even he, the Son of God, struggled with his calling and said to God, God, must I go to the cross? Must I suffer through this part of my journey? Can you take it away from me? But yet, there was a little thing on the inside him that said, but not my will, but your will must be done. And if this is the only way, then this is what I will do. He would not change course when it came to doing what was right. Now, none of us here are likely to go through what Jesus went through. Okay? But I think you can see some sort of metaphor and parallel here, right, in what Jesus is going through. I mean, have you had times where it felt like it would just be easier to give in to the world instead of fighting to make a better one? To prioritize making money and grabbing power and having security and comfort over values like being generous and humble and serving other people? Yes, me too. I'm sure some of the leaders here have had moments where we said, God, you're calling, maybe just don't call me already. Don't call, then I don't need to answer. I don't need to say no. Because this is just too hard and too disappointing and too painful. Building a church that wants to matter, that really wants to follow Jesus and make a difference is really very hard. And sometimes we need to be remembered that, hey, it's okay because even Jesus struggled. Even God could acknowledge, no, God didn't stand in heaven and say, my son, why are you not resilient enough? Buck up. Cheer up. Hey, come on, suck it up. Right? No, instead, it's very funny. Like Elijah, in that moment where he wanted to take his own life because of his calling, God sends an angel to strengthen Jesus. That means God understands sometimes the human journey is really hard. Sometimes the journey to do what's right is really hard. So hard that God needs to send an angel to strengthen us. That God needs to say, hey, it's okay, I understand. And so sometimes we need to remind ourselves that it is okay. Sometimes we will go through the moments of the Garden of Gethsemane like Jesus. But even then, it is possible to keep being resilient under pressure. You see, resilience isn't strong all the time. Resilience isn't the lack of anxiety. Resilience isn't brave all the time. Resilience isn't you have strength all the time. Resilience is sometimes just that little thing on the inside that says, but not my will, but your will be done. No matter how I feel, it's okay. I'm going to keep going. Okay? So, let me get to Winston Churchill right now. How many of you here still pose for photos like this? Yes? Oh, raise your hand. The moment you raise your hand, we know what generation you come from already. Hey, no! Gen A is doing this now. Welcome to our generation. Okay, awesome. Gen Z, y'all. Okay, how many of you here pose for photos like this? Hey, our church don't have. Wow, what's going on, man? You do, right? No, Who are all the Korean drama fans? Sue poses like that. Gen X. Okay, so listen, V, right? Okay, now, besides being something that we do for photos, now, most of us know this as the peace sign. Am I correct? Is that still what we call it? Okay, now, it is the correct name, but actually, originally, before it was called the peace sign, its original name was the victory sign. And it was popularized by Winston Churchill himself. So, the use of V as a victory sign started in January 1941, when a Belgian politician, Victor de la Vela, something, proposed the letter V as a unifying symbol of resistance across Nazi-occupied Europe. Now, it was chosen because it stood for V in English, Okay, victory in English, it was the first letter. Victoria in French, okay? And I don't know how to pronounce it, Vrijheid, okay, which means freedom in Flemish, which was the native language, one of the native languages in Belgium, okay? So they chose the letter V. But once they did that, later in the year, Winston Churchill himself adopted it, and it became his signature gesture of defiance against the Nazis. Now, of course, after World War II in the 1960s, 20 years later, during the Vietnam War, okay, people started to take Churchill's original victory sign, and it was repurposed by anti-war activists. So they felt by flashing the sign V and chanting for peace, protesters shifted its meaning from winning wars to ending wars. And from then on, it became known as the humanitarian sign for peace. Okay, but back to World War II. Okay, thanks to Churchill, the V sign becomes the rallying signal in Britain and eventually the rallying signal for victory among all the Allied nations and America itself. Okay, so that is the story behind why we show the peace sign in photos, okay? So listen, who was Winston Churchill? Winston Churchill was a British statesman, army officer who served as Prime Minister of Britain. So he served twice, once in 1940 to 1945 during World War II, and then later again in 1951 to 1955. Now, Winston Churchill, unlike George, was a high flyer from the get-go. Okay, he was born into an aristocratic, rich family, and he was the son of a British politician and American socialite. Now, he was extremely intelligent, very well educated, but as a youth, chose to join the British Army to fight in the wars that preceded not just World War II, but also World War I. So this guy was really old during World War II, okay? So eventually, after finishing his tour in the army, he becomes a politician, and very quickly he rises to president of the Board of Trade, and then Home Secretary. And during World War I, he is appointed as First Lord of the MLT, which means he was the commander of the air and sea factions of the army. After World War I, he was appointed Minister of Munitions and then Secretary of State for War, and then heir to the Secretary of State for the British colonies. He was successful and he was well respected. But listen, in the 1930s, in his 50s, he suffers a terrible setback in his career. He falls out of favor with Parliament for sounding the alarm against Nazi Germany. He warns the British government that Germany was rearming itself after World War I and that Hitler would surely set his eyes on conquering Europe and then Great Britain. He argued that at the rate Hitler was mobilizing and accumulating munitions, that very soon the Nazi army would not just be on parity with the British army, but it would surpass it. But because Britain was still reeling from the devastation of World War I, the idea of another war was something unthinkable. And so even though everyone could see how dangerous Hitler was becoming and how terrible the spread of his ideology was becoming, many MPs wanted to negotiate peace with Hitler instead. In fact, Edward was one of them as well. Okay? And so at 50 plus, nearly 60 years old, when Churchill should have been enjoying the height and the glories of his stellar career, not just Parliament, but his own party betrays him and ousts him from the cabinet. Churchill is depressed. So depressed, he retreats to the countryside and spends his days painting. But despite his depression, his conviction about how dangerous Hitler is continues to grow. And within a year of a sabbatical, he starts writing books and begins speaking all over the country again. In fact, he becomes so popular among the people that Hitler begins to fear Churchill more than he fears the British PM at the time. You know, one time, Hitler even has a drawing commission and sent to Churchill personally to mock him. Okay, to laugh at how fat he is and how Hitler is just going to bomb the heck out of him. You see, this is why, dictators don't change one. Narcissistic dictators are just all childish. However they behaved 50 years ago is exactly how they behave today. Okay, can you imagine leaders of powerful nations wasting time commissioning stupid cartoons and drawings to mock other leaders? Is that the kind of leader you want to follow? Okay, so eventually though, right, Hitler kicks off World War II by suddenly and without warning invading Poland. And immediately on the very day of invasion, Parliament summons Winston Churchill back to London and they appoint him head of the War Council. Now, before you think, wow, what a turnaround, what a vindication for Churchill, right? Listen, you need to understand the context of what's happening when they call him back. When Churchill was ousted and the opposition party took over Parliament, their party leader, Chamberlain, becomes the Prime Minister. Now, you must think with me, right? Why would the opposition leader, the PM, invite Churchill to take on such a crucial, prolific role as head of the War Council? Prime Minister Chamberlain has an ulterior motive. Okay, he is looking for a scapegoat. You see, Britain has delayed too long, years avoiding preparing itself for war. And so, in this moment, when the Nazis have invaded Poland, listen, the chances of a good outcome for Britain are almost insurmountable. But listen, Churchill, knowing this, still comes back and takes on the role willingly, despite knowing what they're trying to do. And true enough, while on the War Council, despite all these things that are happening, this guy, Chamberlain, and his lackeys keep trying to block all his actions. Okay? He has 2 loyal lackeys, minions, okay? Probably the one standing there. Okay? And so every policy and every decision that Churchill tries to make, or bills he tries to pass, budgets he tries to pass, they cut him off at every turn. And so over the next few months, guess what? Europe, okay, despite sending British troops to go to Europe to aid the nations there, Poland falls, Finland falls, Denmark falls, and then Norway falls. The Brits lose so many troops in war that now Chamberlain begins to pin the blame on Churchill. He attacks Churchill in Parliament, demanding accountability for the fall of Norway. And Churchill, instead of saying, it's not my fault, you didn't do this, and playing the blame game that he was playing, guess what? Churchill gets up, he humbly stands up in Parliament, he says, I take full responsibility for everything that has been done at the Admiralty, and I take my share of the burden. And because of Churchill's humility and the awareness of people in Parliament of Chamberlain's unethical tactics, in a surprising but not surprising turn of events, Parliament turns on Chamberlain. They demand his resignation and they move to elect Churchill as the new PM. Chamberlain tries to salvage the situation by putting forward his own successor. But the successor himself states he is not willing to be held responsible for everything and points back to Churchill to take over. So 3 days later, King George calls Churchill to Buckingham Palace and he is officially appointed the new Prime Minister of Britain. See, I don't want to sound too long-winded, but responsibility, man, right? You see, a lot of people want recognition. A lot of people want the title, but very few people want the responsibility. And under real pressure, the real worth of a person always emerges. Whether we have integrity, whether we have responsibility, whether we have care for other people, whether we have resilience under pressure. So as the new PM, Winston Churchill makes 2 amazing speeches. The first is his speech, Blood, Toil, and Tears and Sweat, which he makes in the House of Commons to all of Parliament. He says, this is just an excerpt, you ask, what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war by sea, land, and air with all our might and all the strength God can give us. To wage war against monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word, victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory there is no survival. The second is a broadcast that same week which he makes to the British public, and it's a speech called Be Ye Men of Valor. It says here, and this is one of the most famous lines, "We have differed and quarreled in the past, but now one bond unites us all, to wage war until victory is won and never surrender ourselves to the servitude and shame, whatever the cost and the agony may be. Conquer we must, and conquer we shall." You know, when I read the biographies, right, it is sort of really hard not to be inspired by this man. You know, even though, listen, leaders are complicated, colonialism was complicated, but when you read his words and what he did, it is really hard not to be inspired in some way by him. This man, at 60 years old, after enduring betrayal and depression, enduring a team of vipers, sending in troops, unprepared because of petty politicians, and watching the troops die in battle and losing battles, he still had this overwhelming resilience. And he said, "We will win." He had this deep sense of responsibility to the well-being of his people. I'm just amazed how he maintained his vision and convictions even in the face of defeat after defeat. You see, this is the kind of resilience we need from our leaders today. Not the kind of people who will take credit when things go right and then push blame when things go wrong, but the kind of people who live with a deep integrity and humility and service to others, who are not about, just doing what is recognized, but about doing what is right. That is the kind of resilience we need in our own lives. Despite the dark times we are living in, despite the struggles that we'll face at different stages of our journey. This is the kind of resilience every youth here needs to have, and every youth here we want to teach you. Don't give up when you're doing what's right. Don't give in when your heart feels beaten up and beaten down. Don't buckle when you encounter challenges and delays or rejection or betrayal. Don't break down when things don't go your way. You see, again, when I read of the accounts of what transpired, I cannot believe how Churchill found the determination to keep going. Because when you read all the details of what it was like, it was so negative, so toxic, so difficult. The stakes were so high. Men were so petty. His detractors made his job so impossible. And because of them, and this is the worst part I hate sometimes about these stories, because of these petty small men, so many British troops perished in a way that could have been avoided. See, but this is what Churchill would say, and this is one of his most famous lines: "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." I love this quote. Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. In fact, I think it's one of the best definitions of resilience I have ever read. It is the courage to continue that counts in our lives. When you want to live a life that's different, when you want to make a difference in the world, you need the courage to continue. You don't need talent. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to never make mistakes. You don't need to never fail. You just need the courage to continue. You need that kind of resilience under pressure. You see, that is what Jesus had that day in the garden. It wasn't strength. It wasn't a clear mind necessarily. It was just the courage to continue. Resilience under pressure. Now, finally, we come to the last leg of our message, right? We come to the pivotal story of Dunkirk. Okay, so at this point in the war, it is late May 1940. Britain has lost all those battles across Europe that I just mentioned. And now it all comes down to this place called Dunkirk, a region in France across the straits from Britain. Okay? So most of France and Belgium were already about to surrender. And here is the map. Do we have the map behind? Okay, so this is the map of Dunkirk, okay? So can you see that small pink strip over there? That little beach, okay? That little strip, that is Dunkirk, okay? And across the strait, you have England. Okay, over here you have France, over here you have Belgium. So Belgium and France are about to fall. Following? Yes. The British troops have gone to aid them, and now everybody is huddled in a place called Dunkirk, that little strip, okay? And so what happened was, in order for the Nazis to invade Britain, right, German forces had to come from the north, south, east, west, correct? Yeah. East, okay, or southeast, all right, from France. Okay, and they also had to come from Belgium from the west. Okay, in order to get to Dunkirk and then cross the straits to get to Britain. Following? Okay, and so what happened was they had cornered the British and French and Dutch forces and different allies, okay, 400,000 troops in total along that strip of Dunkirk. A beach that is literally 60 miles wide and 50 miles in width. Okay, so listen, the situation in the war was as bad as it could get at this point. Britain had lost too many ships, and in fact, it reached a point where they had lost so many ships that they would not even be able to mobilize to get the soldiers out of Dunkirk in time before German forces got to them. And at that point, America hadn't entered the war, and they had repeatedly refused to send troops and aid. So Churchill realized in that moment that if they didn't find a way to evacuate those 400,000 soldiers, Germany would wipe out the Allied forces altogether, because that was all that was left of the Allied forces. So it was starting to seem, even for him, like there was no plausible chance of surviving, much less winning World War II. So on 20th May 1940, in the last desperate attempts to save British lives, Winston Churchill triggers something called Operation Dynamo. The War Council, okay, puts out a notice mobilizing the British public and tells them, anyone with a boat, fishing boat, trawler boat, small boat, medium-sized boat, whatever, we need you. Okay, and we need you to sail across the strait to help evacuate these soldiers at Dunkirk. Because listen, out of the 400,000 soldiers there, over 300,000 are British lives. So even as the notice goes out, Churchill starts to prepare himself to announce the unprecedented military catastrophe that's about to happen. But guess what? In that very, very dark moment in Churchill's life, King George suddenly pays a secret surprise visit to Winston Churchill. George goes to the bunker to see Churchill just after Churchill and Parliament had ordered the royal family to evacuate to Canada. Remember that part of the story now? So we're coming back around, right? Now, this is not a photo of the actual meeting. Okay, this is when they first met. Okay, after Winston Churchill became Prime Minister. The meeting they met was in secret, so no photo. Okay, so... Okay, but from their very first meeting, right, you should be able to tell these two are not comfortable with one another. Okay, and the fact is, historians write, King George actually really did not like Winston Churchill. In fact, he disapproved of him becoming PM. He found Churchill too fiery, too provocative, too emotional for his shy, quiet self. Okay? But regardless, it was at this secret meeting that King George tells Churchill, I do not want to surrender. George tells Winston Churchill to tell the public what is really happening, how bad the situation is, and tell them the truth. But to tell them not to give up, to fight to the very end. I mean, this is our timid king we're talking about here, right? You know, where is this courage coming from? Okay? And King George also tells him, I refuse to leave Britain. Okay? So, this is what happens next. 3 days later, on 23rd May 1940, this is on a Thursday, King George declares 26th May a Sunday, okay, 1, 2, 3, 3 days later, a national day of prayer in Britain. And he helps to rally the people to help with Operation Dynamo. On 26 May 1940, on a Sunday, British people flood to their churches. This is a picture of Westminster Abbey, the main cathedral in London. People all over Britain flood to their churches to pray. 27 May 1940, on a Monday, Operation Dynamo evacuations begin. Now, I imagine, right, it must have been a really strange sight to behold. You know, the fact that you would see hundreds of fishing boats traveling across the straits to rescue soldiers. And yet, think about it for a moment, what a miracle. How crazy, right? That there are fishing boats going to rescue soldiers. But then, listen, even stranger things began to happen on that same day. Hitler, for some unknowable reason, suddenly orders the Nazi forces to halt their advance for 3 whole days. Now, until today, right, historians cannot explain what happened, because Hitler had surrounded the Allied forces at Dunkirk. By all accounts, had he continued, he would have decimated majority of the troops before they could be evacuated. But he stopped for 3 days. Okay, 3 whole days. Now, some scholars hypothesize from reading certain records, right, bits and pieces there, that Hitler maybe might have been giving Britain a chance to surrender without having to go to war. Now, there are some documents also of generals arguing with Hitler over his order. But Hitler, you know, unpredictable, narcissistic dictators, you argue with me more, the more I say no. Hitler did it anyway and halted the war. Now, some scholars also hypothesize that maybe it was because the Nazi army was waiting for the arrival of one of Hitler's most prized generals, this man named von Kuschler, to come and assume command of the forces over there. Okay, both those that were in Belgium and those who were at the front, combine them and attack the British together. Nobody really knows, okay? But what happens next is this: 30th to 31st May 1940, General von Kuschler arrives to assume command. However, on 30th May, bad weather grounds all the German planes and infantry so badly that they can't even send the infantry to go to the beaches to attack the British. So they gain another day. You know, von Kuschler received intel, however, from the front that say, hey, you gotta come and you gotta attack quickly because the British are fleeing and they are evacuating on fishing boats. But for whatever reason, again, historians cannot explain, the general ignores the intel. Now, on 31st May, weather starts to calm down. They can attack, but he continues to ignore the intel about the evacuation. Okay, now meanwhile, on the British side, because the weather has calmed down, evacuation now doubles up. Over 1st to 2nd June, the seas become calm and things speed up, and by 3rd June, they halt Operation Dynamo. By then, 338,000 troops are evacuated, 140,000 are French, Belgium, and Dutch, the rest are British. Okay? And then by the time General von Kuschler arrives, only 30,000 to 40,000 are captured by the Nazis. So on 9 June, King George again declares a national day of thanksgiving for the miracle of Dunkirk. And that is how the battle got its name. So isn't that kind of crazy and sort of amazing? Everything could have been lost in the span of those few days. The whole of history could have changed in just those few days on that tiny little strip of beach. But somehow, the British people prevailed and the tide of World War II changed. Now, we can call this coincidence. I mean, historians themselves are apprehensive to call this a miracle from God, and I get it, man, right? But put yourself in that situation in 1940 for the British people, right? They are about to lose 400,000 lives of their own people, right? You know, and somehow, by fleets of fishermen, right? They were preparing for defeat, my friends. And somehow, with fleets of fishermen and the weather coming at the right time and Hitler and the enemy suddenly making strange decisions, somehow the Allied forces prevailed. And the miracle of Dunkirk and the story that began to spread among the Allies of British resilience becomes the spark that ignites others to join together to resist Nazi Germany. It's amazing how tiny things can make huge impact. Are you here with me? So, which brings me to the last quality I want to talk about, all right? And that is reliance. One of the beautiful things about this story is it is a story of reliance. Reliance on God and reliance on your community and your neighbors. Responsibility on behalf of others, resilience under pressure, but also, listen, can I tell you, even with the first two qualities in life, none of us can ever do life alone. We need to be able to count on God. We need people around us for strength and support. You see, even Jesus in his darkest moments needed to pray. He needed his Father's strength. He needed a heavenly angel to come and strengthen him. You see, we all need more than ourselves to get through dark times. Right? You know, we need God to give us comfort that no one else can provide in the same way. We need, I need my team and my friends in moments when responsibility feels too much. When the last bit of my resilience is about to fail. We need God and people to hold us up. You see, King George had his wife, Queen Elizabeth, to hold him up. He did what he could, but sometimes the weight of the war and the responsibility of being king over a great people was too much. It's recorded over and over again that many times when he was out there in the rubble and he was so overwhelmed by emotion for his people that he could not speak, those were the moments where Queen Elizabeth would take the responsibility to speak and express on his behalf. And Churchill, as resilient and strong and fiery of a man as he was, there were moments where he struggled under the weight of all that pressure. Of the lives that were lost because of his decision, of the lives that were counting on him to help them survive. And in those moments, he had the support of his family and even, his enemies in Parliament who decided to stand up for him. And then from King George himself. In his darkest moment, when he was ready to give up and prepare himself to tell the people that he had failed, the king who didn't like him came alongside to be his encourager and told him, do not surrender. See, after Dunkirk, for 5 whole years, Britain continued to fight. And finally, 5 years later, on Victory Day, when World War II came to an end and the Nazis surrendered and the Japanese surrendered and Italy surrendered, then listen, by then Winston Churchill, finally, he and King George became good friends. And finally, he's smiling on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, right? But it's very funny, right? Historians describe them as awkward but fond friends for the rest of their lives. They may have had fundamentally different personalities, fundamentally different abilities and talents and ways of doing things, but what they did share, I will say, is they shared the same values of responsibility, of resilience, and a friendship that forged through reliance on each other in the darkest of times. See, our world has it all upside down. We think the way to get ahead is to take responsibility only for ourselves. We think resilience is this certain image of always strong and always macho and always nothing is ever wrong. Nonsense. And we think friendship should be forged on only chemistry alone. Listen, some of the most beautiful friendships you will ever have are not the people you click with the most, not the people that you have the most chemistry or things most in common with, but the people who can be counted on and relied upon in your darkest moments. Those are the values that hold humanity and communities together. Everyone say responsibility. Say resilience. Say reliance. Inspired today? Come, let's stand to our feet.